Welcome to the Town of Los Gatos Joint Town Council Parking Authority meeting of March 17th, 2014. I'd like to call the meeting to order and have the clerk call roll.
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Diane McNutt.
Here.
Councilmember Barbara Spector.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Przynski. Here. Vice Mayor Marcia Jensen.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Steve Leonardis.
Here. At this time, I'd like to remind those members in attendance or those members of the audience in attendance this evening to silence your cell phones or other communication devices. Leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight is Morgan Tinsley. Morgan, will you please come forward? I'm going to say a few words, share a few words with you to the audience this evening. Morgan Tinsley is a sixth grader at R.J. Fisher Middle School. She is a natural leader with excellent communication skills and a member of the National Charities League. Her favorite and best subject is math. She volunteers every Monday morning to do community service in a former teacher's classroom and loves working with the younger students. She loves to sing and is involved in local theater productions. And I think this weekend you were in a play at Fisher called Beauty and the Beast. Is that correct? What part were you?
I was a hat seller and a knife.
A hat seller and a knife. That's a double role. She loves music and has taken piano and guitar lessons. She plays recreational soccer, used to be on my team. She is a dog lover extraordinaire. Big or small, she loves them all. She also loves the movies and never tires of watching her favorites. Pitch Perfect is a favorite movie she likes at this time. Please join me in welcoming Morgan to lead us in our pledge this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Morgan. I also want to let you know Morgan is part Irish. So. Please give one more round of applause for Morgan. Next this evening, we'll have a presentation called Small Business, Big Applause. I'd like to invite Mr. Bill Shepard to the podium and join me. About 20 years ago, I was introduced to Mr. Shepard's business through a mutual friend who is in the audience this evening. And I had a very difficult question to ask a young lady. And that was something about...
He helped you along the way, didn't
And he helped me along the way. And from the moment I walked into his business, very kind, very helpful, very supportive. It was the epitome of the Los Gatos businesses that we all know and enjoy in our community. He has been doing this in Los Gatos for since 1982, which makes it about 32 years just in our community. His business goes back much further than that. Shepard's Jewelers has been around for a total of 1968. He goes all the way back to 1968. And at this point in time, it is a choice to work for Mr. Shepard. It's not a must-do thing, but he chooses to come to work every day still and operate his business as a small business owner. And that's the whole meaning behind this segment we call Small Business, Big Applause. Just to say thank you for coming to our community, and thank you for choosing Los Gatos and continuing to operate your business here year after year through thick and thin, working hard every day, being a part of the business, and serving the good people of Los Gatos. With all that said, I'd like to present to you a commendation for your 32 years in business. Mr. Shepard has informed me earlier that he is not Irish. Nevertheless, you get this, but let me read what it says, and then I'll present it to you. Also, Mr. Shepard is a member of the Lions Club. We'll get there in a moment. The commendation reads, whereas Shepard's Jewelers, a retail jeweler in Los Gatos, owned and operated by Bill Shepard, began business in 1968 in San Jose and relocated to their current Los Gatos location in 1982. And whereas Shepard Jewelers specializes in custom jewelry design, jewelry repair, diamond settings, and more, and relies solely on customer referrals, not public marketing campaigns.
No website.
And
I locked the door. You have to ring the doorbell.
you have to ring the doorbell if you want to get in.
It's hard to come in and see me.
It's hard to get in, but it's worth it if you can make it. So it does not rely, it relies solely on customer referrals, not public marketing campaigns to expand business. And whereas Shepard Jewelers participates in community service through work with the Los Gatos Lions Club of Los Gatos, and whereas Shepard's Jewelers is passionate about their work and love being a Los Gatos business primarily for the community they serve. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Los Gatos does hereby render with special appreciation and commendation to Shepard Jewelers for 32 years of dedicated service to the Los Gatos community. Congratulations, Bill. Thank you. I'd like to say a few words or share a few words. It's up to you.
Yeah, I will. I'm very humbled by this recommendation. And I'd like to thank Steve. I'd like the City Council. I'd like to thank. And, it's like being in business. You're in business because you want to be. And like the City Council people are here because they want to be. And, everybody should appreciate what they do and appreciate the town we live in and the people that live here. So I want to thank you very much for giving this to me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
It's very well deserved. Thank you for coming. Congratulations. Next, I'd like to invite Mr. Jimmy Dinahan to the podium. We are honored on St. Patrick's Day to have the Irish Minister of Arts and Culture visiting Los Gatos. Minister Dinahan has visited Los Gatos on many occasions. He and his Irish Consul General joined us Friday for a meeting and reception here in this chambers with the community invited, and we agreed to form a committee that will further enhance our sister city relationship between our community and Listowel, Ireland. The minister then had the opportunity to be the Grand Marshal in the San Francisco St. Patrick's Day Parade Saturday. In recognition of the importance of our sister city relationship with Listowel, I am pleased to make the following proclamation. And I have to get that, sorry. Whereas the sister city relationship between Listowel, Ireland, and Los Gatos was endorsed by Los Gatos February 1993 and by Listowel in July 1994, thanks in large parts to the efforts of Jimmy Dinahan, Minister of Arts and Culture, and the Los Gatos and Los Gatons, Johnny Hannigan and Pat O'Laughlin. And whereas Listowel and Los Gatos share many commonalities, including our beautiful natural settings, our charming town centers, our traditions of art and literature, and our rich histories. Whereas in the 20 years since we were twinned, Los Gatos has been honored to receive a number of delegations of Listowel dignitaries, and many Los Gatons have visited Listowel. And whereas the sister city relationship between Listowel and Los Gatos offers many future opportunities for cultural, art, literary, and youth exchanges and business relationships. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Stephen Lenardis, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the town of Los Gatos, do deem it appropriate and do hereby proclaim March 17th, 2014 as Listowel Sister City Day within our town, and encourage this day to be celebrated every March 17th in the future by flying of one another's town flags above our cities, our respective cities. And this evening, I would like to present to you the proclamation which I just read. Thank you. And our town flag. We hope you can fly that on March 17th, and we hope to get one of yours that we can fly every St. Patrick's Day. And one of our commemorative bags to put those items in. It's going to save you 10 cents. Would you like to share a few words, Mr. Dinahan? Thank you.
Well, Gwina Ushla Galer is Kus Moor Oz, Dumsa Ben Armask, Untranona, Bra, Allan Shaw in Los Gatos. I'm delighted to be here with you on this beautiful evening in Los Gatos. I was asked to say a few words in Irish there by Orla Nigonal in our own Irish language. So I'm really delighted to be here, and I would like to thank you, Steve, for again renewing our sister city relationship, which is a very important one from our point of view. Listowel in Ireland, we're very much in a very remote part of Ireland. We're on the edge of the Atlantic, and the sister city relationship has worked very well in the past. Large number of young people, as you said, Stephen, have been visiting Ireland over the years, and vice versa. A lot of young people from Listowel got jobs here in Los Gatos over the years because of the city-sister relationship. So it's really very important, and I'd just like to thank a few people here this evening. I'd like to thank Greg Larson, who really worked very hard at getting a large number of people here last, I think it was Friday, to renew that relationship. And I would like to thank you very much as well, Pamela Jacobs. Pamela has been very helpful over the years as well. She's retiring shortly. She'll be a loss to our relationship, but also a loss to the City Council, no doubt as well. So thank you very much. And just also to the councillors, Stephen is very positive about this relationship. It was Pat O'Loughlin, some of you may have remembered Pat when he was here. He had connections with County Kerry, so he was very enthusiastic about it. Just he's passed away since. So Stephen, thank you very much for your interest, which you demonstrated last Friday, and I'm convinced that you will continue. And also your council members, just Marcia, Dan, Joe, and Barbara especially. Barbara visited Listowel actually, and when she arrived in Listowel with her husband, she said, God, this is strikingly similar to Los Gatos. Now, that says a lot for Listowel, because Los Gatos is really the most beautiful part of California or the world. It's a place to live in, obviously. And it's extraordinary. There are a number of people from near Listowel, from County Kerry, that live here. I've met 3 or 4 people. So there are people living here in Los Gatos, actually, from the area where we come from. There's one here this evening, actually. There's O'Hanlon. He has moved over there recently, himself and his wife. They've come to join your community here. And they're going to get involved in just promoting our relationship as well. Also, there's a local man here. He's not from Kerry, he's from Limerick, a man called John Hartnett. He's been living here for the past 16 years. Just opened an office down here, venture capital office this evening. I opened it for him. So that will be his office, but it's going to be the Listowel Los Gatos office as well, foster this relationship between us. I'll probably put in a secretary there just to foster this relationship and develop it. But anyway, John, just to say to John Hart, John has been over here. He's very much involved with Irish networking. He set up the ITLG, it's the Irish Technology Leadership Group that has brought all the Irish people involved in technology here in the Valley together, and they are now promoting technology in Ireland. They're getting some small companies over here, They're incubating them over here. Hopefully they'll become bigger companies. And they've certainly done really a tremendous amount of work to recover the Irish economy, and we are recovering. You may have heard, we had some difficult periods there with the crash of the whole property market, real estate market, but we are recovering now, and it's on the back of exports. It's on the back of really companies from the Silicon Valley that are producing an awful lot of our wealth. So we're very grateful to you people here in the Silicon Valley and the Greater Bay Area for the help that you're giving to Ireland. And we're reciprocating. Large number of Irish companies are over here now developing in the valley as well. American companies generally provide about 100,000 jobs in Ireland. Irish companies here in America provide about 80,000 jobs. So it's all part of the dynamic and that connection between both the Silicon Valley, California, and our country. And just finally, there's a large, ethnic connection between Ireland and California. Of the 39 million inhabitants, population of California, 3 million claim direct Irish descent. Here around the Bay Area, actually, the percentage is higher. It's 10%. So there's a huge concentration of Irish connected people here in this area, something that we value very much. So I'm delighted to be here this evening. It's a very special evening, and I'm very confident that our relationship can continue to grow and expand, and for the betterment of both sides. So, Guramila Mahagud Galer. That means thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dinahan. It's still St. Patrick's Day, and we have a couple Irish dancers that will be coming forward here in a moment. While they're moving the table, I will introduce you to these our young Irish dancers who are here this evening. The first is Laura Herron. She is a 7th grader at Fisher Middle School. And her friend is Rasheen Gilmore. She's in the 5th grade at St. Mary's School. They have been dancing together since kindergarten age, and they dance with a program through the rec center called the Whelan Kennelly Irish Dance School. One other interesting fact about the two ladies is all their parents are from Ireland, born in Ireland, so you were here on the right night. So we're ready to begin. We have music queued up. Laura and Roisin, would you please come up forward? I have something to give you before you leave. You did a fantastic job. That was wonderful. Thank you for coming in. was here just about 2 weeks ago, and she led us in the pledge. So we already gave her a different gift. So this is a different gift from last time. We had to change that up for you. Roisin, this is just like the gift that we gave Laura 2 weeks ago. Not to be outdone, Roisin's sister Neve is not here this evening. However, she was going to be here, but we'll send this home with just for the thought that counts. We had it. Let's give another round of applause for these young ladies. Thank you.
And Mayor, if I may, per your request last week, we've set up a special email address for anybody who wants to join the effort to revitalize the Los Gatos-Listowel sister city relationship. And as the mayor has said repeatedly, it's for Irish and non-Irish alike. Those who like Irish are welcome. And the address is irish@losgatosca.gov. So anybody who wants to help strengthen our sister city relationship, please write us at irish@losgatosca.gov. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Moving on to our closed session report this evening.
Yes, good evening. Prior to tonight's regular session, councilmen in closed session to discuss anticipated litigation. No action was taken and requires reporting under the Brown Act.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Moving on to council matters. Councilmember Brzezinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To report on meetings since the last council meeting itself. On Thursday the 6th, I met with the Valley Transportation Authority Board of Directors. And there was no reportable action that would relate to us as a town. On the 11th, I met with the Housing and Community Development Advisory Committee, and at such time we distributed some significant financing to home grants, affordable housing development, and the public services organizations. And then lastly, to report on the 13th, the Cities Association Board. Interestingly enough, there were two measures that the board chose to support. Senate Bill 1262, which is the initiative to control and to contain the various issues relative to marijuana dispensaries, and then Assembly Bill 1449, which was to reevaluate realignment, wherein the prison population is being reduced, but it's having an impact on the local level.
Thank you, Mr. Brzezinski. Any other council members? Vice Mayor.
Thank you. On March 13th, I attended the Valley Transportation Agency Policy Board, and of interest to Los Gatos would be there was a discussion, continuing discussion about the proposed Route 85 toll lanes. We received a report, and we're hearing about what's going on in different communities and how they're addressing it. I believe it's on our agenda in Los Gatos in April, Mr. Larson. So for those of you interested, and the other issue that may be of interest is that VTA is developing its own guidelines to assess traffic impact, a traffic impact analysis in connection with environmental impact reports, in particular with respect to how traffic might impact different highways and freeways, and how jurisdictions might apply to VTA to figure out different means of assessing traffic impacts. So that's moving through VTA.
Thank you. Since our last business meeting, I attended a meeting of the West Valley Sanitation District Board of Directors, and it was a general business meeting where we listened to a few reports provided by our director. Any other reports? Seeing none, manager matters.
Thank you, Mayor. Two items to report. First, Silicon Valley Reads is a regional program that this year is focusing on books on technology, friends or foe. And the program comes here to Los Gatos this Friday for two events. At 6 p.m. at Village Books, Joe Bloom, the illustrator of the fantastic flying books of Mr. Morris Lesmore, will be at Village Books again at 6 p.m. this Friday. And here at the Los Gatos Library at 7 p.m. will be the author, Robin Sloan, of Mr. Penumbra's 24-hour bookstore. Again, that's at the Los Gatos Library and co-sponsored by the Friends of the Library. And that's this Friday evening. I also wanted to introduce to the council the Los Gatos High School senior government class, if you could all stand. And in particular, I wanted to single out and embarrass Cortez Portillo, the son of your HR director, Rumi Portillo. And Mr. Mayor, we'd now request we go to board and commission appointments.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Prior to the meeting this evening, the council had the opportunity to interview applicants for various boards and commission appointments in town, and our clerk, Jackie Rose, will be going over the process.
Good evening. So tonight what we'll be doing is calling each board and commission, letting you know the number of applicants and the number of vacant positions, and then we will ask for a vote by vote of hands. Once we get your vote count, we'll go ahead and let you know who, if any, have been appointed to the commissions, and then move on to the next one. As for the Housing Element Advisory Committee, we may run into a voting scenario tonight, and I wanted to explain that to you. Any votes that have, any applicants that have 3 or more votes would be appointed to that commission. Then we would move down to the votes that are 2 or 2, 2, and 1, or 0. Anyone that has 1 or less would be eliminated from that vote, from that commission or that voting process, and then we'll go ahead and redo those that are that have the 2 count vote, and we'll go from there. Is there any questions?
Councilmember McNutt?
Thank you, Mayor. It's not a question. I just wanted to make a statement that we always are encouraging the community to step forward and apply for these commissions. And you really did in big time for the Housing Element Advisory Committee, and it makes our job even more difficult. And the question that I often receive, and I'm sure others do too, is how do you decide who you're voting for? So just as an introduction, I wanted to say before we go into the vote that what I'm looking for tonight is some fresh perspective. I think it's a real opportunity to bring some new ideas into the process. So I look forward to the vote, and I thank everybody for showing an interest in this.
Councilmember Spector?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to confirm that using the Housing Element Advisory Board as an example, each council person will have 4 votes.
That's correct. So if there is
Or I should say up to 4 votes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Any
If
further?
if they're in the first round, if we have, say, one applicant that has 3, that applicant would automatically be appointed to that commission. And so there would be, say, 4 seats left or 3 seats left. You would only have 3 votes, up to 3 at that point. So.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? I would just like to add myself that we had a great response for the Housing Element Advisory Board, and we're just pleased to see so many applicants come forward, 15 applicants for 4 positions. So it's a difficult choice, but we will be making that choice this evening, and if you don't make it this time, please apply for future boards and commission opportunities at a later date. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to start with the Arts and Culture Commission. We have 3 vacancies and 1 applicant. The applicant was Cheryl Hare. And if I could get a vote by a show of hands? Okay, thank you. So Cheryl Hare is appointed to the Arts and Culture Commission. We have 2 vacancies left on that, and we'll go ahead and move those till August and re-advertise. Is that?
Town Manager, is that correct?
Our next round would start in August with appointments in November, December. The council could direct earlier recruitment just for that commission if you so desired.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, the next is Transportation and Parking Commission. We have 2 vacancies and 3 applicants. The first applicant is Michael Kane. The second applicant is Glenn Roberts. Okay, and the third applicant was unable to attend, so he did not get interviewed tonight. So Michael Kane and Glenn Roberts would be appointed to the Transportation and Parking Commission. Okay, next is the Housing Element. We have 4 vacancies and 15 applicants. The first applicant is Tony Elseron. Second applicant is John Bourgeois. Third applicant is Debbie Bright. Fourth applicant is Pete Denevi. Fifth applicant is Melanie Hansen. Sixth applicant is Jeff Longridge. Next applicant is Barry McCarthy. And Janet Goetz. Barry Minkin. Edward Morimoto. Lee Quintana. Maria Risto. Greg Slack. And Sandy Twari. Okay.
And if I may recap for you, Jackie, Melanie Hansen was appointed with 4 votes. Jeff Lockridge was appointed with 2 votes.
I had 3.
3? 3 votes. Did I say 2?
You did. That's
sorry,
okay.
I meant 3. And Maria Risto with 3 votes.
John Bourgeois with 4.
John Bourgeois with 4, so all 4
Okay.
are filled.
So all 4 positions are filled. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Rose. Next on the agenda is our consent calendar. Does any member of council wish to pull an item from the consent calendar? Vice Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull item 2. I have some questions.
All right, item 2 is being pulled, and that will be heard following the vote on the other items on the consent calendar.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could point out that there was a desk item on the minutes correcting the maker of the motion on one of the items reflected in that minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And as the audience can see this evening, there are 2 cats on our table up front. And I would like to call the audience attention to that, the sculptures. These are mock-ups of the cat sculptures that will be going in our trees downtown, assuming that the council will be adopting the idea of this on our vote coming up. These are the sculptures that are recommended by our Arts and Culture Commission. Okay. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll vote on the consent calendar, and then we'll get into more detail on the cats. All right. So we're looking for council for a motion. Councilmember Spector?
Yes, I'm going to move to approve the consent calendar, now consisting of items 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. It passes unanimously. Okay. Now we will move on to item 2, which is what I just started talking about, which is the item that the Vice Mayor pulled for discussion. And these are cats that were the Arts and Culture Commission worked on for a number of years to commission artists out in the community to design, and the idea would be to install these in 10 trees downtown and call it the catwalk. So I would like to, first of all, thank the Arts and Culture Commission for their efforts on bringing this idea forward, and I see many of the members in attendance in our audience this evening, and then we will move on to council discussion on this matter. Vice Mayor.
Is there any representative of the Arts Commission that can come up and answer questions?
Good evening. How are you?
Good. I know that you've worked hard on this, and I know what the concept is. My question is, can you describe to me more thoroughly the vetting process, and what were the committees that were comprised? I know you had the Chamber of Commerce, the Arts Commission, that you sent it out for bid. You got 3 things back. So I'm just curious, how broad was the representation? What were you looking for? How did you select what you selected?
Well, thank you for asking. So this has been a lengthy process. The first time we went out for bid, we went through a procedure called CAFE, and I can't tell you what the acronym stands for. Perhaps, Christina, you can, but it's an online website that artists go to look for requests for proposals for artists. We received, at that point, I believe, 14 applicants. Our subcommittee of the Arts and Culture Commission reviewed those and used various criteria relative to the, did it meet the specifications? Would it last 10 years? Did it meet a sense of the community spirit? And while we came up with the first, second, and third choice, at the end of that vetting period, we sat there, looked at each other, and said, how proud are we going to be to have any of those cats in our trees on the day we cut the ribbon? And a very difficult discussion pursued, and we decided to open up the bids again, hoping that we would get something that better met what we thought our needs were. So again, that delayed the process even further, but we went to a series of, again, we went to the CAFE, online advertisement. Members of the commission also sent emails and addresses to Christina on any artists we might know. And David Stonecipher, who's a member of the Los Gatos Art Association, notified all the artists there. We contacted universities, community colleges, and so we did, I don't know, hundreds were sent out. And I can't remember how many applications we got, but I want to say 8 the second time around. And no one from the first time actually proposed again, but we were still considering those, even though they really didn't meet our criteria. So at that point, we thought, so we'd asked for a representative from the Museum of Art. We asked for a representative from the Chamber of Commerce, because one of the things we really wanted to do was create an energy around our Commerce Center, which of course was on Santa Cruz Boulevard, so that it could benefit not only the businesses, but children walking through. And we were hoping to create an energy where people might look up and say, well, I found 2 of them. Where's the 4th one? Where's the 5th one? Where's the 6th one? And so we got 7 or 8 applications. I'm trying to think. We also had someone from the Park and Recreation Commission serving on our committee. And the vote was, it wasn't unanimous, but it was all but one of the members of our extended committee chose these artists here, who happen to be in the audience this evening. They have done public works all over the country with just wonderful results. And I'm trying to, did I answer most of you? Oh, so then?
Yeah, I think you answered my question. So what I'm hearing is you had 1 person from Parks and Recreation, 1 person from the Chamber of Commerce, 1 person from the museum, and essentially the Arts Commission.
And staff, and 3 members from the commission and staff.
Has there been any widespread public display besides tonight? Have you put them anywhere where people walking around can see them and react to them and tell people in the town what they think of them?
No.
Is this is their debut?
We thought it best to bring it to you
Okay.
first before the public made a decision on them. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Further discussion?
I don't have any questions, but if there's somebody else wants to talk, it's a regular meeting, so.
Thank you, Ms. Wilcox, for coming forward and sharing that background with us. So seeing no further discussion, Councilmember Brzezinski.
I'm going to support this motion. I think that what we see in front of us is just a really good product as a result of a long period of time and not without controversy. And the fact that the Arts Commission had to continue to process this and to see this as the outcome, I, as a member of the community as well as a council member, really am looking forward to all of these being put in place in our downtown so that people can ooh and ah and go along and look for the ones that they haven't seen yet. And I commend the whole commission and all those who participated in this great outcome. Thank you so much for everything you've done.
Thank you. We'll go with Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to go ahead and make the motion that Mr. Brzezinski is going to support, which is to approve consent agenda item number 2, the catwalk art installation, and I echo all of his positive comments and thanks to the commission and everyone in the community for their hard work.
Councilmember Spector.
I was just going to note for the record that we didn't have a motion, but Ms. McNutt took care of that.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Vice Mayor.
So I, too, commend everyone for their hard work. I understand what the concept was, and as you artists out there, you know that different people react differently to art. And you're no doubt familiar with the cows in Chicago, the guitars in Austin, and the sharks that were in downtown San Jose that have quite a different look than what we see in front of us. And so my concern is I would like to have more of a public vetting. I would like, for example, these cats to go out to the farmer's market. I would like people to be able to react to them. I know I'm in the minority. I know that you artists out there tisking, but I'm just one person. So I'm the only one that can't support it because I would like to see more of a public investment in it before, and by that I mean widespread, before I can vote to support it. So I appreciate everything you've done. I'm not discounting it in any respect, but I would just like to see more of a vetting.
May I respond to that?
Mr. Stonecipher, you may come forward and answer the question.
Mayor, we don't have a second on that motion yet. You might want to see if there's a second before we go
I'll
farther.
second the motion.
Oh, thank you, Councilmember McNutt.
So is my response appropriate?
Your response is welcome.
Will be? Okay, good. You know, we are the Arts Commission, and we are a body that is formed in the town of Los Gatos in order to dream up these ideas and to do what we think is appropriate for the enhancements of arts in the community before it goes to you all, and of course before it goes to the community. So I'm not really sure why you would think that we need to put these in the farmer's market to have them vetted. That's what the community has us for, in my opinion. And we've spent a lot of very careful time on this and thoughtful time. So I'm not very appreciative, and I think I can speak for our whole commission, of you wondering why we would reverse that. Thank you.
Mr. Stonecipher, I absolutely respect you and our commission, and I certainly understand the role of committees in the community. I guess I'm just thinking that with something like this, you can have, with all the best intentions in the world, just as committees went through the affordable housing overlay zones or whatever else we go through, and have the community absolutely reject it. I'm just being overly cautious about what the reaction might be, but I have nothing but respect for you and your opinion, taste, discretion, knowledge, and everything else. I'm just concerned about have we looked at it enough? And I appreciate everything you've done. Please don't mistake that.
What I'm saying is that yes, we as a branch of you have looked at it in great detail, and we have a lot of confidence in it. And I would hope that you would feel more positive than that. Thank you.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Mr. Stonecipher, I just have one question for you. And it is my understanding that the first 10 cats will be installed, and then the community will have an opportunity to, and the public will have an opportunity to come and react and provide feedback on a general basis
Sure.
before
Absolutely.
another installation is.
Absolutely. Well, we hope another installation, then another, and then another. We look at it in a very positive way. And we hope that the community will just embrace this thing as soundly as we have.
So this is.
You have.
This is just the first step for the public
Exactly.
to see it and have the initial test.
Yep.
Thank you. So we have a motion and an official second provided by Mr. Brzezinski. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The motion carries 4-1. Moving on to verbal communication. I have one speaker card. I want to remind the audience, if they want to speak on any subject which is not on tonight's agenda, that they're welcome to come forward and fill out a speaker card. And so far, I have one card, which is John Shepherdson. If you could please come forward.
John Shepherdson, 120 Oak Rim. This is a article on the internet today. Last edge of Greenland ice sheet to resist global warming is now unstable. In a study published Sunday in the journal Nature Climate Change, they said a surge in temperature from 2003 had eased the brakes on a long river of ice that flows to the coast in northeastern Greenland, known as the ice stream. The river takes ice from the vast basin and slowly shifts it to the sea. In the past, the flow from this ice stream had been constrained by massive buildups of ice debris choking its mouth, but a 3-year spell of exceptionally high temperatures removed this blockage, and like a cork removed from a bottle, helped accelerate the flow. From 2003 to 2012, northeastern Greenland disgorged 10 billion tons of ice annually into the ocean. So I go through that because I think that there's a big problem. And so what's one of the solutions? And I was looking at the general plan, and it talked about the environment and sustainability and cool roofs. And I was talking with your manager, Mr. Larson, that you have a point system to encourage people to use cool roofs. And I'm just here to endorse that concept in your general plan. And this is material author Arthur Rosenberg he's affiliated with Lawrence Livermore Lab and really the guru for energy in the state of California. So this is just data that, not too fast, if you could go back. So this is just an idea in cities where they have roofs that aren't white or roads that are darker, you have higher heat elevations. Keep going. And keep going. So in Chicago, virtually all of the deaths occurred in these heat waves where in the top floors were black roof buildings without air conditioning. And the idea is with the white roof or cool roofs is the light hits the white roof and it bounces up. And so you don't keep that energy in the atmosphere. We can go. And this is some of his materials that are illustrating these concepts. And you can see to the left-hand side, white and the benefits there. And then if you have black paint. And so if you can just stop right there. The idea, it's cost efficient. Am I done?
Mr. Shepherdson, you could finish your sentence if you'd like. Your time is technically up.
My point is simply that to encourage the use of cool roofs in the town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, for the council's information, I'm meeting with Mr. Shepherdson, currently scheduled for next week to discuss this topic in both the sustainability plan adopted by the council Last year, we include cool roofs as part of our heat island strategy to reduce reflected heat and its impact on the environment and climate. And then also with the recently adopted updated building codes, we do apply Energy Code 24, which requires for before any building permit issuance that there be a submission of meeting state requirements for cool roof points. There's certainly much more that can be done, as was presented by Mr. Shepherdson, and I'll provide more information to council after we meet.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Our next speaker is Greg Pinn.
Good evening, Town Council. I wasn't sure of the procedure. I was hoping to perhaps remove item 1 from the consent calendar to request this. However, I was informed by the town attorney that either during verbal communications or from a consent item, I could request what I'm here to request this evening, and that is a reconsideration of the remand back to Planning Commission that occurred on our application back at the last town council meeting. And from what I know of the procedure, there's not a ton of discussion to be done here tonight about that. I do plan on bringing new information back to the town council for why, indeed, it's fair for us to get heard again, yet again, at a town council meeting, the next possible one. But here tonight, I'm hoping to get a motion from one of you for a reconsideration hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pinn. Just for the council's knowledge, can the town attorney please describe the process?
Yes. Motion for reconsideration can be made at your next meeting by one of the council members that voted in the majority of your last motion. And if that does take place and the motion passes for reconsideration, then we would set this matter again at our next available meeting. We'd have to do the notice procedures that are required for the neighbors, but you would be able to. There's certain findings that you have to make that motion for reconsideration. I believe the town manager has those in front of him.
If I may, Mayor, the information that would need to be specifically articulated with the motion is the new information analysis and or circumstances that warrant reconsideration of the prior action.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To staff, if a motion for reconsideration were made, what would come back? I guess I don't understand in this scenario that has been presented to us what's coming back, if anything. I mean, I don't understand the process as the person at the microphone has requested it.
If a motion were made and adopted by the council as requested, what would happen is on a future council meeting to be scheduled as normal and noticed as normal, the matter would return to you that's being reconsidered as if it was being heard for the first time. So there would be a staff report that would highlight the Planning Commission's prior action. It is also required to note the council's prior action and then the request for reconsideration. And that would come back to the council. Specifically, what I heard the speaker request was reconsideration of the remand back to the Planning Commission.
Further questions? Councilmember Brzezinski.
So I need to get this clarified for myself too. Is any action we would take tonight, this is merely to agendize this, and so a reconsideration would be part of another meeting's action, and at that meeting we would, if we determine that it is appropriate to reconsider, then that would then be moved to the subsequent meeting. Is that not correct?
Tonight you would be determining whether to schedule this for complete reconsideration at a future meeting. So it would be, the earliest it could be noticed would be one of your April meetings. And it would be then to bring the item back to decide if the council wants to uphold its prior decision of remanding it to the Planning Commission or not.
Okay.
Vice Mayor.
Now I have a question. I thought that what I heard previously was that if there was a motion to reconsider tonight, that it had to be based on new information, a new analysis, or an articulation of why we would reconsider it, that that's not deferred to another date, correct?
Correct. That needs to be heard tonight.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and back to staff. I understand that the motion tonight would just simply be to calendar a future reconsideration. However, if you look at our policy, it says that the maker of this motion shall specifically articulate the new information, analysis, and/or circumstances that warrant reconsideration of the prior action.
Yes, that's what I've said, and the Vice Mayor has confirmed, and you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, Councilmember Brzezinski.
Well, for purpose of disclosure, I did have a conversation with the applicants this week. And I was informed of the interest in pursuing this. And I think there may be cause here. This is a highly unusual action on council's part. I've been at this for 16 years. I can think of maybe 2 others during that time, but they related to discussion that occurred within the council meeting prior to the decision that seemed to either be lacking in clarity or perhaps in some kind of confusion as a result. And as I review what we did when this was presented to us and we remanded to the Planning Commission, I do think there is potential cause, and I would be willing to make the motion to refer for reconsideration, and I will state some issues that have come to my thinking if there's an interest on the council's part.
So we have a motion. I also must disclose that I met with the applicants. They had contacted me and showed me some of their concerns, and I concur with some of the things Councilmember Brzezinski has said. There is a lot of confusion. I stated at the meeting, the hearing on this project, that because of the 300-foot rule, because of the mixture of the county pockets and 2-story homes being one home away, and their property being kind of in this area where we have a lot going on and not real clear policy that made any sense to me, I felt as though there could be an opportunity. But with that said, new information, is there any new information that you can share with us at this point, Mr. Pinn?
Certainly. Well, what we have here is a project that has spent a year through your planning staff with meeting every rule, every guideline. It's had full staff support, full town architect support, and most importantly, full neighborhood support. And yet it got shot down at the Planning Commission. That is why we feel it is unfair to go back and be remanded back to the Planning Commission. So Planning Commission specifically said to this town council, we are denying it because we don't feel or think that 2-story homes fit in this location. Okay, so currently the new information is there's a petition circling around the immediate neighborhood. There wasn't time to get it complete here because we had to be here at the very next town council meeting. Of the immediate neighborhood, specifically stating they do not want single-story homes. They do not feel that single-story homes are required in their immediate neighborhood. So we're taking it a step further. Though there is neighborhood support for this application as in front of you, we're going to take it a step further at the reconsideration, showing a petition signed by no less than 20 of the immediate and extended neighborhood stating they support the application as it is in front of you.
Mr. Pinn, when I met with you, you mentioned that you had gone through a process at the town, the Design Review Committee, the Historical Preservation Committee. You had mentioned that because of the way you submitted your project as 2 homes being built at one time with a subdivision of a lot, that if you had subdivided the lot and applied for those homes individually, then your project never would have had to go to Planning Commission?
That's correct.
Can you clarify?
Correct. Initially, we considered doing one home, one two-story home. We were told by planning staff that that was going to be a design review, not a planning commission item, and we could go right through. We'd probably be pouring foundations right now. But instead, we decided to go with the two homes, still with full staff support, still following every guideline, still giving up 2,000 square feet of our land for dedication for city sidewalk, curb, gutter, handicap ramp, which none of that are in that area, by the way, which shrink the lots, which require two-story homes to build a marketable home that people in this town are going to want to buy. Single-story homes simply do not work. Not marketability, not for people that want to buy a home here in Los Gatos. So it's really a no-brainer. These are two-story homes. The guidelines clearly state, I mean, they're allowed, and even if you apply the immediate neighborhood guidelines, it's applicable. So yes, Mr. Mayor, at this point, if we were to go back to square one and try and submit one two-story home again, we've been told by staff we cannot do that because of the path that this project has gone on. So we're stuck.
Councilmember Brzezinski.
Well, I guess my focus is more on our action rather than what's transpired since or any petitions or anything like that, because the Planning Commission's job is to look at that information and make a judgment. But I guess the reason that I'm thinking that this might be worth a reconsideration is that it seemed to me that there were some things that we discussed in council when the appeal was being made that could have used greater clarity for the sake of the Planning Commission, actually. I think that what we didn't do here is we didn't give clear direction back to the Planning Commission when we did we found in favor of your appeal, but we did not really make statements relative to why we would see this as something that needed to be considered. A couple issues come to my mind. One is the whole question of immediate neighborhood, and then the policies related to how is that defined when we're making residential decisions. We didn't develop that discussion, although it was raised at the table. I think the other is then the introduction of the concept of this is a property that is surrounded on three sides by county, and how do those county properties, how do the residences that are county generated, how do they apply to this? There was some confusion about whether they apply at all, and I think we just left that hanging as an issue. And then the question of the Presbyterian Church on opposite you on Shannon Road, that was raised as an issue, but never really concluded as significant, I would say. And then finally, it seemed that when we got to the end of the discussion and the motion was made, there was actually some confusion in the motion itself, to such a degree that we did not even indicate in the motion what we determined was the Planning Commission's role in this. They didn't err. They didn't misinterpret policy, therefore. There was no new information, and that was left off any resolution we were making as a result. So those are the things that caused me to feel that you may deserve some reconsideration. And I will make the motion with those things in mind to reconsider, knowing full well that the case is going to have to be made, but I think there's going to have to be more discussion of those specific issues when and if we see you again. So that's my motion to reconsider.
Councilmember Spector.
I would respectfully ask either staff, probably staff, to repeat the motion so I can understand what it is. Thank you.
The motion is to place reconsideration of the prior remand of this matter to the Planning Commission on a future council agenda, in compliance with the proposed reconsideration of prior council actions policy, and the specifically articulated points included, starting in reverse order, confusion at the time of the making of the motion, the consideration of the Presbyterian Church across the street from the parcel, the consideration and clarification of county parcels on 3 sides of the subject property, and the determination of adjacent 2-story homes in the definition of the neighborhood. And I believe I captured all of the motion maker's points.
I'll second the motion. I'm particularly interested in the county homes being located on 3 sides of the property and that's applicability. I drove by the house, I drive by the site of the houses almost every day. And to me, when you have 2-story homes that are essentially diagonally across 1 parcel away or 1 parcel away, despite the fact that they're in the county, inevitably those could be part of the town with the annexation laws, and maybe they should be considered further when it comes to defining the neighborhood. As well as some of the other points that were made, I'm willing to second the motion. Well, Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. When we get to the vote, my question for the manager or the attorney is, do I get to vote? Because I was not part of the council majority. Yes, okay, thank you.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. I'm going to support the motion. I met with I talked with Mr. Penn about this. I knew he was considering asking for this motion for reconsideration, but for none of the factual issues contained in the motion, but only because when the council sent this back to the Planning Commission, it was my understanding that we were doing it as a courtesy and an accommodation for the developer. And then the new circumstances for me would be that the developer does not want that accommodation and wants it back at the council level. So it will be for those reasons, that process reason, that I will be supporting the motion.
Vice Mayor.
I won't be supporting the motion. I don't think that the new information or analysis that's been articulated meets our standards. I think that everything that's been articulated was actually considered both at Planning Commission and at the Town Council meeting. While I also met with Mr. Pinn and I'm sympathetic to his situation, I think that what this does really is show how desperately we need to reconsider the role of the town architect and how that we need to educate our staff about the direction that needs to be given to applicants. So I won't be supporting the motion.
Further discussion? I'll call the question on this one. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Passes 4-1.
Thank you.
I have no other cards for verbal communications, so we'll be moving on to our first public hearing this evening. Now that everybody's gathered their notes, the first public hearing is a conditional use permit U-13-U12, subdivision application M13-004, architecture and site application S-13-020 through S-13-027, negative declaration ND13-002, property location 258 Union Avenue. We're considering an appeal of the Planning Commission denying a request to construct 8 residential condominiums on property zoned C1. And I believe Ms. Avila has a staff report for us.
The council received a desk item this evening. It is a letter from a resident on House Court, who lives directly behind the site, who was unable to attend the meeting. So hopefully you received that and had a chance to read those comments. This project site is located on the east side of Union Avenue, one lot south of Los Gatos Almaden Road. There was previously a commercial building on the site that was demolished in 2001, and that building last housed O'Shea's Bar. The site is about 3/4 of an acre, or 32,700 square feet, and it has a C1 neighborhood commercial zoning. Adjacent properties are developed with single-family residences to the rear, townhomes on one side, an office building on the opposite side, and across Union Avenue is the Downing Shopping Center. The applicant is requesting approval of a conditional use permit for 8 detached residential condominiums, a tentative map, which would be just a condominium map, and architecture and site approval for 8 units. One of those 8 units would be a below market price unit, and that is unit number 2. Each unit has a unique architectural style and color scheme. The color material boards are hanging on the rear wall along with the plans. The project meets minimum parking requirements, inclusive of guest parking. It has the required private and community open space, and it is proposing to have shared driveways, which is common with this type of development. The one unusual aspect is the detached units. The applicant has revised their plans to address some concerns that were raised at the Planning Commission meeting by House Court residents. Those concerns included visual view and privacy impacts. On the 2 site plans that are posted on the rear wall to the right of the town seal are the new site plans. The one on the left side is the site plan that was reviewed by Planning Commission. These plans are attached to the council report as well. They're attachment 14. And you also received the original plans, which is exhibit 13 of attachment 2. The project was initially considered by the Conceptual Development Advisory Committee in November of 2012. Those minutes were provided to Commission and Council. Revisions were made to the plans following that CDAC hearing, including adding guest parking, modifying garage entries and orientation, and reducing unit sizes and changing the architecture to make all the units individual. The Planning Commission considered the project on December 11th, 2013. The Commission approved the mitigation monitoring plan and mitigated negative declaration. However, the Commission decided to deny the use permit, subdivision, and architecture and site applications. The Commission concerns included a concern about development intensity, a concern of the detached condominiums without having the same land area that would normally be provided for a single-family residence, and the impacts to residents living behind the site. The environmental review that was done for the project included preparation of an initial study and a mitigated negative declaration. Technical studies that were prepared for the project include arborist and architectural reviews. Mitigation monitoring plan includes mitigation measures for air quality, cultural resources, hazardous materials, and noise. And those mitigations have also been included in the conditions of approval for the project. The council's options this evening are to deny the appeal and deny the applications as recommended by Planning Commission or as acted on by Planning Commission, or you could grant the appeal and remand it to Planning Commission with direction for desired plan revisions, or you could grant the appeal and approve the project either as proposed or as modified on the revised plans. This concludes the staff report, and staff is available if you have questions.
Thank you, Ms. Avila. We have a question from the Vice Mayor.
I have 2 questions, if I may.
Go ahead.
First question, Ms. Avila, is the below market price unit that's being provided, that's required by code, am I right?
Yes.
Okay. Then the second question is, at the Planning Commission meeting, Commissioner Sayak asked you a question regarding why not a zoning change or general plan amendment for this, and your response was that because there were no residential uses in the area, this might be considered spot zoning. And so my question is, why isn't a conditional use permit overlay onto a zone where everyone's telling us that no one wants commercial? Why isn't that spot zoning?
if you did a new rezoning on the property to a zone that isn't currently in the vicinity, for example, RM, there aren't any RM zones abutting the site or in the immediate area, that's generally considered spot zoning because you're taking one property, zoning in a designation that doesn't connect to anything else. Right now, the commercial zoning does connect across the street. It's also a C1 zone. There is residential in the area, obviously, behind the site and to the left side when you're facing the site. Those are both residential properties, but the zone behind is R1. The other piece of property happens to be in the city of San Jose and isn't zoned by the town. So the property could potentially be rezoned, but it would not be common to rezone it to a designation that is not anywhere in the vicinity. But the use permit, the reason they're asking for it versus for a conditional use permit is the town code does have a provision that allows single-family, two-family, and condominiums through a conditional use permit.
Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions, if I might put them all together.
Please.
So most of the questions, I believe, are for the town attorney. We were given new to me information about the definition of condominium and airspace and so on. So before the applicant or appellant gets up here, can you confirm that the information that we received is accurate as far as you understand state law?
Yes, the information you received is accurate. The condominium development that is proposed in this fits within that definition. It's not as common as you understand it, which has the common walls and common roofs that you do see, but it has been determined that that requirement is not necessary in order to meet the definition of condominium.
And is there in the state law definition of condominium anything that specifies what percentage of the parcel needs to be for common space or open space?
No, that should be defined in your own codes.
And then the concept of exclusive use common space, which sounds oxymoron to me, is that something that you've run across before?
Yes.
Okay. And then my last question is back to Ms. Avila, I believe. Is it the fire department that wanted 4 driveways, or was that the applicant's idea or staff's idea? And where I'm headed with that is it seems like if we were going this direction, like a lot of extra space used up for hardscape driveway as opposed to more open space.
It was a combination of, staff working with the applicant. The fire department initially did weigh in to say that 2 residences off a driveway makes it a driveway, and once there's more than 2 residences, it's a street. Since we met with the applicant and worked through this series of plans, and they came to the Planning Commission, we've had further discussion on that matter because the Hubble Way project originally had 4 driveways and now has a single driveway on their redesign plans. And we've determined that there's really nothing in the town code prohibiting a single driveway for 4 units. So they could potentially have 2 driveways or 1 driveway even and not have 4. It was designed with 4 very intentionally because staff, the information we received from the fire department, from engineering, and that was sort of the direction they were given by all the people reviewing the plans.
Thank you. That's it for now.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. I was going to wait on this one, but ask the town attorney now, because this has come up before in this council chamber before your time, and that is a body adopting the mitigated negative declaration for the project, and that's what their motion was, and that's what they adopted. However, if the project is, and they didn't adopt the project, and we may or may not, we don't know what we're going to do. So how can you approve a mitigated negative declaration for a project when you don't have a project yet?
You're just approving the environmental review tonight, though. You're not approving the project yet. So the environmental review will be done, and then the project which comes along has to be consistent with the environmental review document at a later date. That's my understanding.
And I believe the Planning Commission was just stating that they felt the environmental document was appropriate, that the content was appropriate. They didn't take exception to anything in the environmental document. If the project's not approved, it's a moot point. We don't need the environmental document, but.
All right, well, I understand what the two of you are saying, and I'll take it from there. Thank you.
Further discussion, Councilmember Brzezinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if I'm getting you correct, and I want to just follow up on that last statement. So the environmental document as presented and approved by the Planning Commission was adequate for the proposal in front of them, but they chose not to approve the project. I would assume that, let's say at a later date, if the Planning Commission approved a project and it was of lesser intensity than this particular project, then there would be no question that the environmental document covered that issue?
Yes, usually if you downsize a project, say you want fewer units or smaller units, if you're reducing the impacts of the project, then typically the original environmental document is still appropriate. It would only be if we created with a new project a different impact that hadn't been analyzed or was made worse in some manner.
Okay, but it's acceptable for the Planning Commission to approve the environmental document without having approved the plan?
Yes, they're simply saying that they felt the environmental document was adequate.
Okay. I want to ask a question back to the issue of the zoning and the CUP as appropriate mechanism in the C1 zone to approve residential. I think that was made clear by Mr. Paulson at the Planning Commission meeting that it was indeed the case. Is this typical for us? Do we have examples throughout the community in which we have done this, or if we don't have examples, is this the standard for us, that a CUP would be used in a case where you have the C1 zone, which does allow residential with a CUP?
I think there are a couple of examples in the Almond Grove along the fringes where you have the commercial that stems in from North Santa Cruz in towards like along Almendra, for example. There's some properties in there. There are some areas in town where they have a commercial zoning and there's a residential use on the site. Some of those may be pre-existing uses. We didn't survey it to give you a percentage or a better idea of where that's occurred in town.
All right, but this is policy.
Yes, it's
okay.
Unless the use permit table is amended to drop those uses from that C1 zone, it is a use that's possible based on the evaluation of that specific site and what's surrounding it, and is it appropriate, does it fit in, that sort of thing.
Okay. Could I continue with just one more? One of the issues was the Subdivision Map Act findings, and that obviously we have to make all the findings A through G. And the issue was brought up by a member of the commission that item D felt, the commissioner felt the site was not suitable for the proposed density. Okay? How do we determine suitability in terms of the MAP Act? How do we determine suitability in relationship to density?
Actually, those findings from the Subdivision Map Act are in essentially reverse findings. If you can make one of those findings as grounds for denial. So to approve a subdivision, you don't want to be able to make any of those findings. The Planning Commission cited density. I believe the greater issue is really development intensity. It may be the number of units as well, but it seemed to be more an issue of the size of the units and the spacing and how much development was being proposed on this site relative to what's around it, particularly the residential use behind. But density in the C1 zone isn't defined by the code, so there isn't a specified density range if you do a residential project. So the applicant's proposing something in the medium density range, which is between 5 and 12 units. And there are other projects in this immediate vicinity with that kind of density range. So that's how they determined what they wanted to propose. And it's up to the council to decide whether that's an appropriate density for that location.
Okay, but in terms of D in this A through G range for the Subdivision Map Act, that your interpretation, if I hear you correctly, is that the commission's really focused on intensification rather than on density in that particular call out?
From their comments that they made, it seemed to be a development intensity more than the number of units. I think their issue was the volume, the height, the massing, the amount of development being proposed seemed to be the main issue.
All right,
rather
thank you.
than the actual number of units.
That's it for now.
Thank you. Any further questions for staff? At this time, I'd like to ask council members to make their disclosures, starting with Mr. Brzezinski, if you have one.
Yes, I did visit the site, and I met with the appellants, and we did walk the site.
Vice Mayor?
I visited the site, met with Mr. Wang, his architect, and his realtor.
I also visited the site and I met with the applicants.
I visited the site and I met with the developer, his realtor, and his architect.
I also met with the applicants. I visited the site and toured the surrounding neighborhoods.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to add that I also toured the neighborhoods that were adjacent to the site.
Thank you. So now we're going to open the public hearing on this matter. I'd like to invite anyone in the audience who would like to speak to fill out a speaker card on this application, on the subject, and you'll be allowed 3 minutes at the podium. If you haven't done so, please fill one out and hand it to the clerk. I'd like to call the applicant forward first. You have 10 minutes, and you can share it between yourselves, depending on how many of you there are.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Leonardis and council members. My name is Chris Coomer of CKA Architects. I'm here with Sean Wang, Valley One Investments, Kim Connor of Intero Real Estate, and Jeffrey Wagner of Miller Starr Regalia Attorneys. And we're happy to be here tonight. Let's see. So here's a project site that you've all seen right here. This empty lot on Union Avenue. As Suzanne described, to the north we have 15 homes. They're freestanding homes. There's an R1 district to the east here of single-family homes, duplexes to the south. We've got an office directly to the south of our property, and then the Safeway development across the street. There was just a question about, do we know of any C1 properties that have been developed with residential on them? Here's one right here. Downing Oak Court has duplexes, fourplexes, and sixplexes, and it's zoned C1. This photo shows the empty property in its current blighted state. Here's the zoning map. As I alluded to, so here's our property, 2 parcels that will be merged into one, and it's zoned C1. Here are the 15 homes next to us to the north, office use to the south, residential duplexes here to the south, the R18 here, Safeway here, and this is that development I just mentioned. So it's zoned C1, and it has those different residential components. And then again, we've got residential duplexes here on Pinehurst and RM15 here. So it's really a rich mix of zoning in this area. Let's see. This is what came up earlier. We're applying for a use permit for the C1 zone. Here are some permitted uses, and residential condominium is a permitted use, and that's the method that we are proposing to use here for this project. Here are the development regulations for the commercial zone. We're complying with all of these, not asking for any exceptions or variances. We looked at the history of the property, and the property's been hasn't been used since 1997 when it was the bar. 2001 it was knocked down. There really hasn't been any desire for commercial use on the property since then. Here's a look at the neighborhood at large, and here we are. Here, this is a mock-up of the density of our development. when we first sat down to consider what to do with the land, as Suzanne mentioned, we were given a range of moderate density, 5 to 12 units per acre, and we tried to take a thoughtful approach as to how to decide what appropriate density would be. And so we came up with 8 units, and that results in 9.3 units per acre. You'll see that the residential, the R18 zones have 7 units per acre here and 6 on Howes and Hirschner. And these areas, a little hard to read this, in the freestanding homes here are 14 units per acre. We've got 11 to the south, the duplexes, and this Downing Oak Court is 12.3 units per acre. So we feel strongly that this approach has resulted in a nice transition in the neighborhood. From north to south, the 9.3 fits in quite well between 14 and 11. It's much more moderate. And from east to west, we feel like the 9.3 units per acre makes a great bridge from the commercial zone to a little bit less density here on the R18. As Suzanne mentioned, we brought this then to the CDAC and made further revisions. We began to develop the condo ownership model. This graphic shows that there's one parcel. So it'll be one large parcel. The green areas are commonly owned areas, and the blue areas are privately owned areas. Just like this development in Palo Alto, these are freestanding condos. They're quite attractive, and they're detached, you can see here. Again, nice looking buildings. Here's there's a map of their property, one lot. These are commonly owned areas, and these are privately owned areas. So very similar. Now the town has gotten behind this concept of ownership in the past. Here's a property on Forest Avenue that was developed the same way, and here's one on Town Terrace. Then at the Planning Commission meeting, we brought this proposal. We revised it to make for some softer massing at the rear, given the comments of the neighbors. We moved the second floors back 13 feet and redesigned these 3 units to really try to make a good faith effort to show that we really want to make this work back here. The distances from the residential, from the homes behind are quite large. Here's a view of that newly designed rear. And these only, we used high windows so you wouldn't be able to see directly into the homes behind. And then there's a proposal for a bunch of trees on here that we didn't render for clarity. Here's the ensuing site plan. And this is a view of the proposal. We think it's quite attractive. We put a lot of effort into the design of each unit, and we think the conditional use application is a valid avenue for approval, as we discussed. Residential use is desirable. The project makes a good transition in the neighborhood. The density is moderate and well blended. Freestanding condominium is an acceptable legal type of ownership, and it's attractive and well designed. So we seek your approval, bringing this new information of the redesign of the rear units, redesign of the common space, and also the clarification of the condo ownership. Thank you, and Jeffrey Wagner will say a little word, if we have time, just about the condo ownership.
Thank you. My name is Jeffrey Wagner. I'm an attorney with Miller Starr Regalia. I'm representing the developer, and I have practiced in the area of common interest development law for about 30 years. But actually, I think the town attorney already addressed what I was going to address. I understand that there might have been some issues with the detached concept of a condominium as to whether is that a legal condominium in the state under state laws, and I think your town attorney has informed you that it was. I am happy if you have any specific questions about the detached concept. I know Councilmember McNutt had some questions about exclusive use common areas, but if you have those kind of questions, I'm happy to address those, but I primarily was here to address any issues about the legality of the detached condominiums, which I think has been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean, did you want to say a few words? Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Brzezinski.
Yes, thank you. I would like to expand on your condominium issues, not just from the legality, but from the differentiation of detached condo from single-family residence. Because we've run into this problem in the past. It's been a stumbling block for us to understand how if you have X number of detached condominium units on a single property, how does that differ from what would be considered a standard subdivision, where you would have certain numbers of square feet of property that are dedicated to each unit, and what makes a detached condominium different than a single-family residence that then allows it to have to bypass some of those standard expectations for the subdivision.
Okay, well, I think the important thing to note, and Mr. Coomer mentioned that in his presentation, is what the ownership is on a condominium. And that's the distinction between a condominium and a single-family lot. A condominium ownership every condominium has to have two ownership elements, to legally be a condominium under state law. You have to have a separate interest in a unit, and you have to have an undivided interest in the common area, the balance of the property. And the key distinction here, these are legally condominiums. Each owner will have a separate interest in a unit, and which was shown on the diagram he showed you. The entire lot remains as a single parcel. It's not carved up into 8 individual lots. It's a single common area parcel. And it's owned in undivided 1/8 interest, or undivided equal interest, which works at the 1/8 interest by each of the owners. So each owner would own a separate interest in a unit, and that unit would be shown on the condominium plan, the size of the unit, and they would own an undivided interest in that single lot, a 1/8 interest. So it is a condominium project. It's condominium ownership, not a planned development. A single-family detached lot where that would be carved up into 8 individual lots where each owner would own 100% of the property their home sits on, and whatever else is within those 8 property lines. This is an entirely different project. It's a condominium project. It's a single lot condominium project. We're not carving this lot up into 8 lots.
All right, so if I might, because I think this is a sticking point. We've seen it before. It has been something that we have had some difficulty with, although there are a couple of examples in town that have been approved as detached condominiums. I think it's very important that we see this as distinct from then the standard subdivision, the standard single-family residence. And even though it's law, it still seems like you're putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 single-family residences on a piece of property that is restricted in size. And that to me is where the question arose with the Planning Commission. And I think that that's where we need to be very clear in how we understand what this concept is about.
Just a simple comment on that. To me, it comes down to the green shown here. You know, the common area is the green is the predominant color, as it should be on St. Patrick's Day here, and that's really the distinction. And if these were single-family lots, there would be no green, no common area whatsoever. So this is predominantly common area.
Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. Except that when we met, you were talking about this exclusive use, common area, and fences. So I'm having trouble with that, because if you put a fence up around a yard, it's my yard. So you talk me through how that works.
Let me point out something that was helpful to me in understanding this. This is the Los Gatos Commons. My grandma used to live here, so this has a special place in my heart. It's exactly this. The Los Gatos Commons, we know, is a big development, and each one of these units has its own exclusive use space. So here, and this is hard to see, I'm sorry, but this is their exclusive use patio. And this isn't a new thing. This was done, I think in the 70s when this was built. So it would be exactly that. And there's no, this is definitely a condominium, and that's definitely not a privately owned thing. That's an exclusive use common space. I don't know if that's helpful, but this shows it clearly.
Well, if I might, Mayor, if I just go, it is and it isn't, because it's a little bit hard to see, but it looks like it's just basically a little bit of an extended patio. And what I thought I saw on the diagrams in here, a little bit larger area for some of the units, but not all of the units, which is another concern I have. I don't like having two stepchild units with nothing and having them quite different, especially when one's the BMP unit. So I still need some more beyond that.
So to the last point, the original proposal did have those exclusive use spaces for Unit 2 and 3. And should the council see fit to approve the project, we would be open to a condition of approval of restoring those private or exclusive use spaces to Unit 2 and 3. That was always part of the proposal, so I think that would be a good addition. So, I think the size is just the difference. The rear units have larger exclusive use spaces, namely because the setback there was determined by the zoning ordinance. And so there's a...
So take me through the practicality of it. So the homeowners association has control over all the common areas? So it does all the maintenance and gardening service? So if I want to put a rose bush in my exclusive use common area, do I have to get approval from the homeowners association? Practicality might help figure this out.
Okay, when you have a common interest development and you'll have a set of CC&Rs, on your specific question, there will be an architectural committee so that controls any changes. In addition to any changes, of course, they have to go through the town. And one of those is they control all the landscaping, what you do. Now, there may be situations, let me back up a little bit on exclusive use common areas, because it's recognized under state law. It's a definition in the Davis-Sterling Act. They define common area and they define exclusive use common area. So once you go outside the unit envelope and you're stepping into common area. And then state law then allows you to designate certain parts of that common area that are reserved for the exclusive use of occupants. They can be typically things like parking spaces, like patios, and like yards, and that owner has the exclusive use of it. Now the CC&Rs then can control maintenance of that yard. Typically on a private yard with the fences, the owner would maintain that fence, but what they plant in there is going to be subject to the architectural review committee. But the maintenance of that typically is their own. Not always, it can change. It depends on how it's irrigated. The unfenced landscaping out there is all maintained by the association. That's how that's done. And you can have, for example, a row house set of condominiums that are up against a back property line. Typically, they will reserve, because of the best use of that rear property is to give it to those individual owners as their private little yard. And that's very common.
And my final question is, when you made the revisions that are up here on the wall and that you referenced, have you had a chance to meet with the neighbors to the east and talk through those changes and how it might decrease or increase their concerns?
We did have a chance, and we hope that they would decrease their concerns. We met with one of the neighbors in person, two of them, one in their home and then another neighbor on their driveway, and we also left a letter for other neighbors stating that we would be happy to show it to them. And in addition to that, we revised the story poles, as you saw out there, so that they could see the revision in the proposal. We put up blue netting instead of the orange, and they could see that move back 13 feet.
Thank you.
All right, further discussion, questions of the applicant? Seeing none, we'll start to call the speakers forward. First speaker is Hu Lee.
Hello, my name is Hui Li, and I live at 259 House Court, right behind the proposed project. Actually, my husband follows this project all the time, but he's not here today, so I'm here. From what I understand, even they modify the plan, I still keep my concerns. And I think the proposed project is still too close to my property. And I don't like the idea of a two-story home. This afternoon, I went out in my backyard. What I saw is all the pots with orange and blue mats. So from every angle in my backyard, what I see is all the. So after the home is built, there's all windows and the walls and the buildings behind my backyard. And then there's no blue sky, no mountain view, no sunshine, even in the very early afternoon. So from my point of view, I don't like the two-story home. If they can change it to the one-story home, I would say okay. So definitely, I don't want the two-story home going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Chai-Ping Su.
Mayor and council members, I live in a 261 House Court, so I live right next to the speaker just now, and we live in a single-family home, a single story. So I wonder if you guys live in a single-story home too. So if you do, then you will see our issues, because when I step out of my yard right now, I see two-story homes right now. So if these projects are done, then I'll see like 6 more. So 6 total. So it would be like devastating to us. So just imagine that if in your backyard, you see the sky right now, and suddenly you see a line of two-story houses next to you, then it would be very distressful. But I think if we consider, right now this project has 8 houses, so if the 4 houses adjacent to the neighbor is reduced to single-story, so we don't have a problem. So if your immediate neighbor is two-story house, or going to be remodeled to be a two-story house, you have a problem. But if it's further down the parcel, it's 1 block away or 1 house away, you have less impact. So I think it's exactly the situation right now. So I will ask the developer consider reducing the total development from 8 to like 6, and then so that the 4 units adjacent to us to be reduced to like single story, then I don't have any issue with that. So I think it's a feasible solution to all this, because frankly for us, living in a single story home, to see all two-story new development is really distressful for us. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Lancey Yu.
Good evening, all councilors. My name is Nancy Yu. And
Nancy, could you please pull the microphone?
Okay.
There,
Is
thank you.
it better now?
Much better, thank you.
Okay. Good evening again. My name is Nancy Yu, and I live in 261 House Court. And Chief Ping Siu is my husband, and he just talked. Well, since we live in the same house, I don't want to repeat what he just said, even though I'm totally support, I agree what he said, but I just want to add in a little bit of my concern also. Well, I have a swimming pool in the backyard, and when I stand in the swimming pool and look at all these orange poles, I know that I would lose my privacy in my backyard once this project is approved. And also because this piece of land is at a higher ground than where I am, once the condominiums are built, I would know that from where I am, those condominiums will be blocking the sunlight from the west coming into my backyard. The condominium has a very high visible presence to my house, both inside and outside of my house. And I'm also concerned that this development will contribute to the development of our low density living area into a more crowded and undesirable living area. That is what I want to say. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Yeager.
Hello, I live at 285 Hirschner. I'm also along the back wall. This proposed development was reviewed by the Planning Committee. Each of the commissioners reviewed this material and visited the site. After this, they voted 7-0 against the proposal. I understand that Valley One Investments from San Jose has the right to appeal, and I understand their motivation. Given that this is a 7-0 decision, and the entire Planning Commission think that this project should not be approved, why would the Town Council want to overrule them? In addition, I want to point out there was an error in Valley One's presentation I'd like to correct. In the discussion of comparable density in the surrounding neighborhood, they claim that all 10 homes along Union Avenue reaching Thomas Drive are all duplexes. In fact, there's only one home like this. Valley One also claims that they want to work with us and address our concerns. In discussions with each of us prior to the meeting, they told us we should be grateful they're building condos on the site and asked us if we prefer a bar to be built there instead. This is a reference to the illegal bar that was shut down 10 years ago. We would be very supportive if Valley One proposed a plan which fit in well with the existing neighborhood and did not impact privacy of the neighbors along the back wall. We believe 4 houses instead of 8 would be much more appropriate. One additional concern I noticed personally was the apartment-style trash can right next to my property line, which would likely be open-topped and lead to a lot of flies buzzing around me in my jacuzzi, which is right on the other side from that trash can. We asked the Town Council to uphold the unanimous decision of the Planning Commission. I also want to say that after the Planning Commission made this vote, I was very happy to be living in Los Gatos. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yeager. Next speaker is Maureen Haberling.
I'm Maureen Haberling. I live at 291 Hirschner Court. I live right behind the condos that are on Union Avenue at Los Gatos Almaden. This is San Jose. I tried to get them to reduce the density, but my pleas fell on deaf ears. I have zero privacy in my yard, and I have very little quiet enjoyment. That is an association behind me, but they don't adhere to it. There's noise all hours of the day and night, and it's just not very comfortable. And I'm afraid that these 8 houses going in will get the same results. I'm here to support my neighbors on House Court. I don't want them to go through what I've gone through. I don't want their property values to be decreased as I feel mine has. We're not trying to keep Mr. Wang from building. I agree that 4 single-story homes would be the best in there. Perhaps a cul-de-sac, have a larger yard so that children can play in the backyard. Union Avenue is very busy, and it's just not a safe place for kids to play. The other thing I wanted to point out is that The condos behind me and the lot at 258 Union Avenue are approximately 3.5 feet higher than the lots on Los Gatos, or on House Court and Hirschner Court. I have had a lot of problems with water runoff. The land all slopes to the east. And I've had to put out money to take care of my yard, and I don't want my neighbors to have to do the same thing. I would request that someone from the town go out there and see that, yes, there is an elevation difference between the two places, and any home is going to be much larger or much higher than what our existing homes are. And you know, Mr. Wang is not, he is interested in getting a return on his money. I can understand that, but not at the expense of we people who have lived here for so long. I've lived there since '69. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Pat Scanura.
Good evening. I live at 255 House Court. My name is Pat Scanura. I met with Sean and Chris, and they went over the changes that they made, which I appreciate. I'm going to try to keep it brief. My opposition from the beginning has been the amount of units. I would prefer 6 units. And I told them, I said, what they should do is get rid of the affordable housing unit and make all the units the same price, because I think that they should be able to price it for what the market can bear, and not have to have one unit where they're carrying somebody so they can live there. So that's my take. I mean, I don't have the same issue as my neighbor. I'm not really opposed to second story because I have a second story home. I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say, you can't build a second story home. That's ridiculous. And people don't sit in their second stories looking out at their neighbors. It doesn't happen. It's creepy and it doesn't happen. But, so I think 6 units on that piece of property would be sufficient. I mean, 8 is just too many. And I did mention that to them, didn't I? Right, I did. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's the last speaker card I have from the public. I'd like to invite the applicant forward again. You have 5 minutes to speak.
Do you want me to go? I'm going to have to set it back. Can we just set it back? I'd like to just try to address some of the points the neighbors' concerns that they have here. Particularly here. So this is Pat Scanura's house right here. She mentioned it's a 2-story home. These black homes are 2-story. The neighbor here that sent the letter and also spoke here, they also have a 2-story home. And these distances are 47, 52 feet. Those types of distances between homes are consistent with what you would find in the R18 zone itself. Because of the 20-foot setback from each property, 20 and 20 would give you 40. So we have exceeded that. Now on the other side here, there's a pool here that's of concern. Actually, this house looks into the pool. This 2-story house overhangs that pool. And that house with the pool is 105 feet away or 96 feet away. We think that's a good amount of distance. We've also got an 88-foot distance here and a 70-foot distance here. Also, as you guys, you folks noted when you were out there, there are trees that screen this area, and we have proposed to fill that even more. So that's going to help. Now, the property is up a little bit in height, which was a concern for one of the neighbors. The way previous owner dumped a bunch of soil on there, that's coming out, and the heights are consistent with the average grade before that was done. Let's see. We've also got the trash enclosures. They have tops on them, and that's way back here. I lost my pointer there. And the single family, these homes in San Jose are not condos. They are small lot single family, so there is no association to maintain that. That's the advantage here of the association, is they would maintain the trees. They'd have to maintain the units. So that problem that we heard from one of the concerned neighbors would not happen, or there would be a check on that with the condo association.
I'll keep my talk short because I think Chris answered all the concerns of the neighbors, and so thanks, Mr. Mayor, and also all the council members. Thanks for your time meeting with us last week. Before you make your decision tonight, I would like to reiterate what we have been provided tonight and also in the past planning commission meeting. So first of all, the detached condo is a legal format of condo unit. Also, the conditional use is a valid avenue for many types of development in the C1 zoning, including residential projects. And then residential development fits in this neighborhood, especially even the neighborhood here, they agree with this point. Our proposed design provide a good transition between the neighborhood. Also the density of the project, which many neighbors pointed out, but we feel this density is in the middle range, nothing over or very high. We have also changed our design, try to address the concern from the neighbors after the planning commission. We send all the data to them. We tried to talk to them, but only a couple were willing to talk to us. So my stand tonight is please approve this project. We will and we would like to have this opportunity to make this neighborhood an excellent community for the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Does council have any questions of the speakers before they sit down? All right, seeing none?
No.
Oh, we do.
Mike does a
Okay.
question.
Councilmember Brzezinski?
I don't know who wants to address this, but I would like to have a specific audit of the changes that have been made since the Planning Commission reviewed your project. If you wouldn't mind giving us those, please.
Let's see. So I guess I'll start here. Most importantly, you can see this dashed line here in blue, and if you do want to see those on the wall there, it may be more clear. We took these 3 units, we call them 6, 7, and 8, and we reduced the square footage of those units. Then we took the rear wall and we moved it 13 feet back for each one. Now, by reducing the square footage of the units, we were able to open up space in between the units. So it would appear less like a solid wall in the back. So we opened up a space here, which was a common use space, kind of a park-like space, and we also opened up some space here. Secondly, we took all the windows that were egress windows, so those are windows with a low sill that you could escape in the fire, and remove those from the rear so that the windows that face the rear are all high windows. So in order to look out, you'd have to sort of get on your tiptoes and look out. Additionally, we added this common space in the middle, made that larger. There was a concern at the Planning Commission that the common space couldn't be equally accessed, and so we made that access from the frontage. Some minor items, we had spoken with the neighbors about raising the existing fence 2 additional feet, and that was something that a couple of the neighbors were into, and so the code allows for that, and we would like to do that. And we just increased the screening. It doesn't show here, but there are trees all the way along the rear, right here. Just, this stand of trees is mature, so we're just filling in the gaps. So I think that's a summary of them.
Further questions? Mr. Toomer, I have a question for you. one of the residents spoke about potential drainage problems. You aware of any drainage issues in that area?
You know, I'm not aware of any current drainage issues, but the real thing that they should note is that we had to go through a really strict review based on the C3 requirements that this jurisdiction has adopted. And so there's a full drainage plan, and the water has to be stored on the site, and it gets treated into the ground. So any rainfall that falls on the property ends up in this system. And that's why it took a long time for this project to come through, is, you know, we had to meet all those standards. That's fully taken care of.
Thank you. One of, or a couple of the other residents spoke about the elevation. I think you partially addressed this by saying that the previous owner had added additional dirt to the site, and you were going to be removing that. So I guess the number that was thrown out there was it was 3.5 feet higher than the lots behind. Will that still be the case, or how much elevation difference might there possibly be?
I don't know where that number came from. It may be 3.5 feet at the top of a mound that was left out there. We had a soils analysis done, and they gave us an analysis of how much fill there was on there. I don't have the number in my head, but just visually, as we were out there, it looks like about a foot drop from the 258 property to some of those homes back there. And then we're going to be scraping a bunch of that soil. But I think in the end, it's about a foot drop.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I'll officially close the public hearing on this matter, and we'll move to council for discussion and motions. Vice Mayor?
I have a question for staff, if I might, or a couple.
Sure.
These are for Ms. Avila, I think. The property that we're talking about is currently a single lot, correct?
It's 2 lots.
Okay, so 2 lots. So I'm confused about the staff report that went to the Planning Commission, which said the properties don't need to be subdivided, but we're doing a condominium, but because it's a condominium, we're submitting a subdivision map act request. So have the properties been merged and then they're going to get subdivided for a condominium map? Is that what's going on?
The 2 properties would be merged. It will become one single lot. It is not a subdivision in the sense that they're creating individual lots. When you see the example maps that the architect showed, those are showing building footprints.
No, I get that.
So it'll be one single lot.
But we're not taking any action to make it into one lot. Why not?
The condo map that would be recorded if the project were approved would merge it into a single lot.
What if we don't approve it? What if there's just 2 lots? Then what? What could be, how big would the lots be? If it were R18, what could be built on them? We don't have that information.
If it were R18, you could potentially have 4 lots based on strictly on land area, but I believe they could only get 3 based on the required frontage of 60 feet per lot.
Okay, and so if there were 3 in an R18, they would have to come back and somehow divide those 2 lots into 3, correct?
Yes.
Okay. My next question is, what or how do our town codes address what I understand is a legally viable construct of condominium or ownership, which is a single standalone residence, which we don't seem to contemplate. We contemplate what we traditionally think of as a single-family home. So where in our code, if anywhere, is the concept of a standalone condominium addressed with setback rules, et cetera?
The code does not have any specific guidelines for condominium in terms of setbacks, whether they're attached, whether they're not attached. There's not a definition that says they're detached. You're right. Traditionally, they're attached. And most of the projects the town has approved to date, with the exception of the 2 that the architect mentioned on Forest and Town Terrace, they have been attached units.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Well, I have a couple questions that mostly just curiosity I'll ask of staff. One is I viewed the story poles out at the site, and they looked really close together when I look at the renderings of the properties, the story poles. I just wanted to know if anybody on staff verified the accuracy of the placement of the story poles.
Story poles were certified as is required by the new story pole policy. So that got done by a civil engineer. It has to be a registered engineer or surveyor that locates the poles and then verifies that they were located correctly and are at the accurate height. So that was done.
Okay. And then, since you mentioned the new story pole policy, I recall there being an artist rendition posted at the site. Was there ever a sign out there that showed the neighborhood what was potentially going in?
As a residential project, it's not a planned development. They're required to have a sign that indicates the public hearing date and that the plans are available for review at the Community Development Department. I believe there was a sign out there. I don't know that it had a rendering on it or not. I don't think it did.
So,
The public hearing is closed,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Wang. So, sorry about that. Okay. One last question I have for staff concerns a comment from one of the speakers, and they expressed a desire to have 6 units out there and do away with the below market unit. The question I have for you is, what is the required amount of units when a below market unit is required?
Projects of 5 or more would be required to have a below market rate or below market price unit. So if they had 5 units, a unit would be required. If there were 6, a unit would be required. It'd have to go down to 4 to not have an affordable unit.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There has been a lot of discussion, I think, about how the Planning Commission did not understand the condominium concept and how they made a wrong decision because they didn't understand it. The record does not show that to be the case. If you look at it, the Planning Commission was looking at facts. They were saying that the project was too dense, that it lacked articulation, that it had small common areas, it had a problem with the units that back onto the back street, had a problem with guest parking, had a problem with the transition between the townhouses in the front and the residential units in the back. They had a lot of factual issues with the development. And it wasn't, yes, they did discuss whether a condominium, a condominium project of this type was appropriate, but they were told yes, and they went forward in that vein. So they did not, in my opinion, make an error in thinking that they could not adopt this kind of project. The challenge they were having is that by having a condominium project, a detached condominium project, it either was or appeared as though there were many more homes on that piece of property than if they had a regular subdivision. And that was the challenge they were having. And they were also having a challenge that if this was the case, how can they control, if this is a condominium project, how could they control it? And I don't feel as though we, the town, have given them good direction, because they do have ways to control the development. They can look at architecture and site, which has a whole number of provisions, including items like site layout and landscaping. They have to approve a conditional use permit, which has them find that the development is essential or desirable, complies with the general plan and the town code. They have to look at the Subdivision Map Act, which has them determine if the site is physically suitable for the proposed use. So they have a lot of mechanisms to assess and control a condominium, detached condominium project. And should this go back to them, I'm going to strongly, or they have any other one in the future, I'm going to strongly encourage them to look at all of these mechanisms because they do have the ability to control or give direction to what's going on that property. And I would also hope that when they get staff reports on this or future detached condominiums, that staff will also review the architecture and site ordinance and the CUP and the Subdivision Map Act and the general plan and give the Planning Commission and us guidance as to whether or not this project is acceptable. So it's maybe premature, but I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to remand this project back to the Planning Commission. I'm doing this on the basis, first of all, that we have new information. We have new information from the applicant. And I'm going to remand with specific direction that the Planning Commission, with hopefully the assistance of the staff, will look at the Architecture and Site Ordinance, the CUP Ordinance, the Subdivision Map Act, to determine for themselves what they feel is appropriate on this site.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Councilmember McNutt, I looked your way first, so.
Thank you. Yes, Mayor, I'll second the motion. And my comments are that this is a difficult application. It's a difficult piece of land. I do think it's appropriate for residential. And I think we're headed on the right track, but I don't think we're there yet. I wish that the Planning Commission had sent the applicant back to work with staff to come up with another iteration that address some of their concerns and just work it through. So with all of the comments that Councilmember Spector said, I also want to emphasize that for me, this should not be an assumption that I agree with the number of units or with the layout on the site. And I would not want to see us lose the BMP unit under any circumstance because it's important to us to keep adding affordable housing throughout the community. And I'm very concerned about the open space, common space, and making sure that however that's defined, whether it's the traditional intuitive definition of common space or its exclusive use, that all of the homes in the development, however many that may be, has some kind of equal standing on that and not a two-tiered approach.
Vice Mayor is next.
I'd like to echo what Councilmember Spector said regarding the Planning Commission and the condo. In my reading of the Planning Commission, it's certainly not that the Commission didn't understand or was confused by condo ownership. What the problem is that a legal construct that allows for what appears to be an individual unit with an individual yard, which ends up being your own house, but unless I went and knocked on your door and figured out what your contract was, I wouldn't know it was condo, ends up being a creature that we unfortunately haven't addressed in our various codes and land use policies. And so we are struggling, as the Planning Commission is struggling, and Councilwoman Spector, thank you, gave the Commission lots of different ways to look at it. But our difficulty is that creative and smart developers have determined that the detached condominium on a less than 40,000 square foot lot is the way to get a planned development. And I would say that our Plan Development Ad Hoc Committee needs to look at that gap because, as Ms. Avila said, we don't have any rules on that. So the protests we hear are, you're building 8 houses where you can't build 8 houses. And this is also a commercial development, or a commercial zone. So if it had been residential, we could only build 3. You can't put a planned development because the lot's too small. So it's, I'll build detached condominiums. That doesn't mean it's not allowed. That doesn't mean it's illegal. That doesn't mean somebody's confused about how condos work. What it means is that that construct ends up undermining lots of policies that the town has in place for how single units are developed. And so it's the town's obligation to make sure that the staff knows through a revised policy, changes in codes, whatever it may be, that that's something that is the Planning Commission and the Town Council is not comfortable with. We had another development like this that we turned down. So while we struggle with those policies, I would hope that the staff conveys to applicants that it is an open issue, and while legal, it may not be advisable. So I'll support the motion.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to follow up with what Councilmember McNutt said. By making this motion and sending it back to the Planning Commission, I'm definitely not saying I'm sending it back for this number of units. That is an issue for the Planning Commission to determine. Under the existing ordinances, architecture and site, CUP, subdivision, general plan, I agree that it's going to take more work on the Planning Commission's part and hopefully with staff's assistance to make this an appropriate development, because you're not going to be able to say, well, it has to be 25 feet back from the side yard and 15 feet back from the front yard, whatever. You're not going to have those mechanics. You're going to have to go to the wording of our applicable ordinances and general plan, and you're going to have to get your legal construct from that. So it's unfortunate that it has to be done that way, but we have a planning commission that can do it, and we have a staff that should be able to help them.
Councilmember Brzezinski.
I, too, am going to support the motion. I think it's appropriate to send it back because there is new information, and it seems to me pretty clearly the information demonstrates that there has been movement, an attempt to somehow buffer this project from the neighborhood on the east side of the project. I want us to make sure we know what we're doing here. I mean, the fact is that we want to protect the neighbors as much as we possibly can, but we also want to create a project that is appropriate and beneficial to the town. And I think that we have to, as we look at all of these issues, with this particular type of development that we have not specified for in our own language, we have to accept the fact that we are attempting to achieve something of benefit. Therefore, to take a look at the distances between the rear elevation and the projects, or rather the residences on the east side, is important, more from the point of view of what do these distances achieve? And actually, do they achieve more of a buffer from the neighborhood because of the distances that you've already outlined, given the way you've situated those homes on this property? I think also we need to consider the fact that architecture and site is going to be analyzed, and that's our opportunity to make sure that this is a very good project. I think it's important that we're all learning that this detached condominium is something that's been around for quite a while, and it is law, and it is a design type that is being used and may be very popular. And I don't think it's necessarily an attempt to create a planned development on a smaller space than we can. I think it may be an evolution of residential type that is relatively new to our community, but it is a reality that there are different types of residential properties that are being developed at this time. I hope that you can spend more time with the neighbors talking about the real impacts, okay? I want to hear everybody talking. I don't want to hear anybody say, well, I couldn't talk to him or I won't talk to him. I want to make sure that when you come back to Planning Commission, you've had good dialogue with the neighbors. That means everybody cooperates, as far as I'm concerned. I think that's really important because we want to be good neighbors. And that's part of our intention as the council, is to make sure that we protect our neighborhoods and we protect the living environments of our neighbors. At the same time, I think we have to be very, very honest about our description of the impacts. Reality must be the rule. It's not appropriate to use hyperbole or to be more to indicate greater impacts than perhaps are going to really exist. But that means that the developer and the neighbors have to sit down and talk to make sure they know what are the realities out there. As far as my interest in the Planning Commission, I think it's a really good thing that you're going back to the Planning Commission. I think there's been some evolution of the project, and the evolution of the project means that you can make your case, but you have to make your case. This is, we take development very seriously around here. We take residential development very seriously. And because of that, it behooves the appellant in this case to drill down on what the issues were that the Planning Commission indicated they had interest in. I think Councilwoman Spector's comments were right on when it came to delineating all those things the Planning Commission wants to do. And so I hope that will be taken very seriously, and that there'll be progression that occurs as you go back to the Planning Commission.
Mr. Manager?
I wanted to reflect back to the maker of the motion to make sure we're capturing it correctly. And it's attachment 10, a resolution of the town council granting the appeal and remanding back to the Planning Commission. And on attachment 10, striking the whereas regarding new information, and that clarification has been provided on condominium form of ownership, but leaving the whereas that says council has determined that there is new information that the Planning Commission did not have benefit of reviewing when considering the applications, and that the applicant is prepared to make plan changes to address neighbors' concerns. And then changing the therefore be it resolved to provide the direction staff believed was included in the motion. And the applications are remanded to the Planning Commission for further consideration of the proposed project in terms of number of units, size, and location pursuant to the general plan, conditional use permit, subdivision map act, and architecture and site.
Generally, it sounds fine. I'm not prepared to sit here and reconstruct my motion and see if it fits into the proposed resolution. I tried to make my motion as specific as possible, and I will just defer and look to the staff to listen to the motion on streaming video and do as good a job as you can. Thanks.
We will.
All right. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this topic? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. It passes unanimously. Moving on to our next item and our last item this evening. Council will be potentially adopting a resolution which vacates the Albright Way and Albright Court easements, reserving a public utilities and a public service easement for the existing utilities. And on our staff report is Matt Morley, our Parks and Public Works Director.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you. I'll provide a brief summary of this item for you tonight. On February 18th of this year, council set tonight as the hearing date for the vacation of Albright Way and Albright Court. Advertising and noticing has occurred as required, and staff's recommendation is that these two streets are no longer required by the town as a result of the council-approved plan development. Future access for the site will be available through privately constructed and maintained roadways. And approval of this vacation will allow construction on the Albright Way project to proceed. Tonight's agenda item, as you said, Mayor, is a public hearing on the vacation of the easements, providing the opportunity for interested parties, if any, to provide information on why the streets may still be required by the town. And subsequent to conducting the hearing, staff's recommendation is that council find the easements on Albright Way and Albright Court are no longer necessary. And secondly, that the council adopt a resolution vacating those streets and reserving public utilities and the public service easements for the existing utilities. And with that, that concludes staff's presentation report, and we're available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Morley. Is there any questions of staff from council? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience this evening who would like to speak on this subject? Seeing no one coming forward, I will close the public hearing. I'll look for council for a motion or discussion or both. Councilmember Brzezinski.
I will make the motion to find that the easements along Albright Way and Albright Court are no longer required by the town and adopt the resolution vacating Albright Way and Albright Court, reserving a public utilities and public service easement for existing utilities, and it's so indicated in the resolution on attachment 1.
Thank you, Mr. Brzezinski. I just wanted to also mention on this, we did receive correspondence from a member of the public about Charter Oaks Court, and that is not being abandoned.
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Morley. We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second? Councilmember McNutt?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Vice Mayor?
I just want to indicate for the record that I'm going to support the motion pursuant to the settlement agreement that was adopted by the Town Council at our last meeting.
And Councilmember Spector?
I agree with the Vice Mayor, and I'm going to be supporting it for the same reason.
Thank you. All right. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. It passes unanimously. With that, that is our final item this evening. Happy St. Patrick's Day. This meeting is now adjourned.